All right, so picture this, right? You're trying to measure the entire Earth,
Okay.
but like all you've got is shadows and some geometry.
Hmm.
Sounds kind of crazy, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly what our guy Al-Biruni was doing
Oh.
way back in like the 10th century.
Oh.
We're talking Islamic Golden Age.
Right.
So today we're doing a deep dive into his world.
Cool.
This guy was like centuries ahead of everyone else.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to see how he did it,
Awesome.
why it matters, and, well, hopefully our brains will be a little bigger by the end of this.
I like it.
So, to start us off, set the scene for us.
Okay, well, we're in the year 973 CE.
Okay.
Europe's kind of stumbling through the what they call the Dark Ages.
Right.
But over in the Islamic world, it's
Yeah.
a totally different story.
Really?
This is the golden age of Islam. Centers of learning are popping up all over the place, from Spain all the way to, Persia.
Wow.
And Al-Biruni, he's smack dab in the middle of it all.
Okay, so where did this guy come from?
He was born in a place called Khwarazm,
Khwaraz.
which is, if you look on a map today,
Okay.
it'd be in modern-day Uzbekistan.
Okay, so Central Asia.
Exactly. And
Right.
it was like a hub for scholars back then, a real melting pot of ideas.
So he kind of like grew up surrounded by all this knowledge.
Pretty much.
Wow. Must have been pretty nice.
You'd think, right.
Yeah.
Except, here's the thing.
Okay.
This area was super politically unstable.
Really?
Oh, yeah, there are all these power struggles going on.
Huh.
You know, different rulers vying for control.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Different groups all wanting the power.
Right. And it makes Al-Biruni's story even more incredible.
Oh, how so?
Well, think about it.
Okay.
This is a guy who's dedicated to knowledge.
Right.
Pursuing these complex ideas.
Yeah.
And all this is happening against a backdrop of, like, total chaos.
Wow, so he wasn't like some rich guy in an ivory tower. He had real struggles going on.
Definitely not.
Wow, that's impressive to just like block all that out and focus on knowledge.
Yeah, you have to admire his focus.
His dedication.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we've got this scholar surrounded by unrest,
Right.
but he's still pushing forward with his work.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about some of his achievements.
Okay, well, you mentioned Earth measurement.
Yeah, I mean, come on, measuring the Earth back then.
I know, right?
It's like almost impossible to even imagine.
It's crazy.
So how did he pull it off?
Well, he used a method that involved shadows.
Shadows.
Yeah, shadows and geometry.
Okay, that's a little more advanced than I was expecting.
Yeah, well, he was a brilliant mathematician.
Okay, but like specifically, how did he use the shadows?
Well, he basically figured out that by measuring the angle of the sun at two different locations and knowing the distance between those locations,
Okay.
he could calculate the Earth's circumference.
Wait, so like just by looking at shadows, he figured out the size of the Earth? I don't even understand how that like works.
Well, it's based on the idea that the Earth is curved.
Right.
And that the sun's rays hit different parts of the Earth at different angles.
Okay, and he used shadows to like measure those angles.
Exactly.
And somehow that gives you the size of the planet.
Well, it's a lot more complicated than that.
I bet.
There's a lot of math involved.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But in essence, that's the basic principle.
Okay, so, I mean, regardless of the specifics, this is incredible.
Oh, yeah. It's a remarkable achievement.
I mean, just to like think of that idea.
Yeah.
To use shadows to measure the Earth.
I know, right?
And not only that, he got it pretty darn accurate.
Oh, yeah.
Like surprisingly close to modern measurements.
It's amazing.
I mean, we're talking centuries before satellites and all that.
Exactly.
And he's doing this with like sticks and shadows.
It's mind-blowing.
So this guy's clearly a genius.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But it sounds like he wasn't afraid to challenge conventional thinking.
Oh, absolutely not.
I mean, we've talked about the Earth measurement,
Right.
but there's more. Right?
Oh, yeah, a lot more.
What else did he do?
Well, how about the fact that he suggested the Earth rotates on its axis?
Wait, hold on. He's saying the Earth is spinning, like way back then.
Yeah.
I mean, wasn't everyone convinced that the Earth was like the center of everything?
That was the prevailing view, yeah.
So he was going against like everyone.
Pretty much.
Wow.
But he had his reasons.
Okay, what was he basing this on?
Well, he was a keen observer of the stars.
Okay.
And he'd also been studying ancient Greek texts.
Okay.
Some of these texts, they hinted at the possibility of a rotating Earth, But it was Al-Biruni who really took that idea and ran with it.
And he did all of this, like, without any telescopes or anything?
Well, he had some basic astronomical instruments,
Okay.
but nothing like what we have today.
Wow, and he was able to figure all this stuff out.
Yeah. He used his observations, his knowledge of math.
Right.
And just, like, pure logic.
So it's kind of like he was laying the groundwork for modern astronomy.
Exactly. He was centuries ahead of his time.
And I'm guessing people weren't too happy about his ideas.
Well, it's always tough to challenge the status quo.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to something as fundamental as the Earth's place in the universe.
I mean, people don't like change, do they?
Not usually.
But, I mean, come on, this is, like, huge.
It is.
He's proposing a completely different way of looking at the world.
And that takes a lot of courage.
It does, yeah.
To stand up and say, hey, maybe everything we think we know is wrong.
Right.
Especially when you're going up against, religious and philosophical beliefs.
Yeah, it's not just about science. It's about, like, challenging the entire system.
Exactly.
So we've got this guy, Al-Biruni.
Mm-hmm.
He's figuring out the size of the Earth.
Right.
He's proposing that it spins on its axis. And he's doing all of this in a time of, like, political turmoil.
Yeah. Pretty impressive, right?
To say the least.
But there's even more.
Wait, there's more?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, what else could there be?
Well, we haven't even touched on his contributions to math yet.
Oh, right. You mentioned he was a mathematician.
Oh, yeah. He was a master of algebra and trigonometry.
Okay, so what did he do in those fields?
Well, he introduced a lot of new concepts. Like, he developed new techniques for solving equations.
Okay.
He also did a lot of work with sine and cosine functions.
And those are, like, the building blocks of trigonometry, right?
Exactly.
So basically, he was, like, rewriting the rules of math.
Kind of, yeah.
And this is all happening, like, 1,000 years ago.
Yep.
It's amazing how far back these ideas go.
It is, and it's important to remember
What's that?
that these weren't just theoretical concepts.
Oh.
These mathematical advancements, they had real-world applications.
Like what?
Well, for example, his work in trigonometry. It was essential for things like navigation and astronomy.
So, like, sailors were using his ideas to sail across the oceans.
In a way, yeah.
Wow, so he's not just some, like, abstract thinker.
Right.
His work is actually shaping the world.
Exactly.
It's like his ideas are going out there and making things happen.
That's a good way to put it.
So he's a scientist. He's a mathematician.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But I read that he was also interested in maps.
Oh, yeah. He was a bit of a cartographer, too.
Okay, so, like, he was making maps back then.
He was.
And what were these maps like?
Well, they were pretty advanced for their time.
Okay, also.
Well, for one thing, he took into account the curvature of the Earth.
Oh, right, because the Earth isn't flat.
Exactly.
And a lot of people back then, they didn't really understand that.
They didn't, but Al-Biruni, he knew better.
Okay, so he's making these maps,
Mm-hmm.
and they're, like, more accurate than anything else out there.
Pretty much.
And this is all before, like, GPS and satellites.
Long before.
It's incredible how much he was able to accomplish with such limited technology.
It really is.
But, it's not just about the technology.
What do you mean?
Well, it's also about his approach to knowledge.
Right.
He was clearly someone who was, like, constantly questioning things.
Well, yeah, he was always looking for evidence.
Right.
He wasn't content to just accept what he was told.
So he was kind of like a scientist at heart, even though, the term scientist didn't even exist back then.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So we've got this guy, he's measuring the Earth.
Mm-hmm.
He's proposing that it rotates.
Right.
He's revolutionizing math.
Yep.
And he's making incredibly accurate maps.
Then that's not all.
Oh, come on, there's more.
Oh, yeah.
What else did he do?
Well, have you ever heard of his book, Kitab al-Hind?
Kitab al-Hind? I don't think so.
Well, it's basically a comprehensive study of India.
India. Wait,
Yeah.
so he went to India?
He did. He spent several years there.
Wow, what was he doing there?
Well, he was fascinated by Indian culture.
Okay. He wanted to learn everything he could about their customs, their beliefs, their science.
So he was like a cultural explorer, too.
You could say that, yeah.
Okay, so what did he learn in India?
Well, a lot. His book covers a wide range of topics.
About what?
Well, he wrote about Indian religion and philosophy.
Okay.
He studied their astronomy and mathematics.
Right.
He even learned Sanskrit so he could read their ancient texts.
Wow, so he really immersed himself in the culture.
He did, and that's what makes his book so valuable.
Okay, how so?
Well, it's one of the most detailed accounts we have of India in the 11th century.
So it's like a window into the past.
Exactly.
And it's all thanks to Al-Biruni's curiosity.
And his willingness to step outside his comfort zone.
Right, to go to a completely different culture and try to understand it.
Exactly.
So this guy's not just a scientist.
Mm-hmm.
He's not just a mathematician. He's
Right.
like a global citizen.
He's someone who sees the value in learning from other cultures.
And this is all happening like 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing how relevant his ideas still are today.
It is.
I mean, we're living in a world where, global communication is so easy.
Right.
And Al-Biruni was doing this like way back when travel was incredibly difficult.
Yeah, it's inspiring.
It is. It really
It shows that, the desire to connect with other cultures,
Mm-hmm.
it's not a new thing.
It's been around for centuries.
Yeah, and Al-Biruni is a perfect example of that.
So we've talked about his scientific discoveries,
Mm-hmm.
his mathematical advancements,
Right.
his work in cartography,
Yeah.
and his cultural explorations.
That's quite a resume.
It is, but there's one more thing we need to talk about.
What's that?
His legacy.
Yes. His lasting impact.
I mean, this guy lived over 1,000 years ago,
Right.
but his work is still studied today.
It is.
So what do you think is his most enduring contribution?
Well, I think it's his approach to knowledge.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Well, he was a strong believer in observation,
Right.
in experimentation, and in using logic to reach conclusions.
So basically, he was using the scientific method.
Yeah, long before it was formally defined.
Wow, that's incredible.
It is, and it shows that, the scientific method,
Yeah.
it's not just some arbitrary set of rules.
Right.
It's a way of thinking.
It's about like being curious, being skeptical, and being open to new ideas.
Exactly.
And Al-Biruni embodied all of those qualities.
He did, and that's why his work has stood the test of time.
So, we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
We've talked about Al-Biruni's life, his work,
Right.
and his legacy.
It's been a fascinating journey.
It has. And I think it's safe to say that Al-Biruni was a true visionary.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I mean, he was centuries ahead of his time.
And his work continues to inspire us today.
It does. So I guess the question is,
Oh.
what can we learn from Al-Biruni?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is this.
Okay.
Never stop being curious.
Right.
Never be afraid to challenge the status quo. And always be open to learning from other cultures.
Those are some great words to live by.
I think so.
So to all our listeners out there,
Yeah.
if you're interested in learning more about Al-Biruni,
Mm.
there are tons of resources available online.
Oh, yeah. There are books, articles, websites.
You name it.
You can even find translations of his original works.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is. So go explore, learn, and be inspired.
Great advice. And thanks to everyone for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
See you next time.
See you.